Hexagram number 17. Following. Follow one's values, no matter how difficult this seems. Following has supreme success. What we follow is our sense of what is essential, just, and correct. To be loyal to the good and the true within oneself is to serve the higher power. Only by being loyal and true to ourselves are we able to be loyal and true to others, and in turn able to command their enduring loyalty. As students of universal truth, we are automatically servants of the higher power. As such, we are meant to obtain a following among others. Through following what is true and good in our own natures, we give others the confidence to follow what is good and great in theirs. Even though for a time they may servilely attach themselves to us, we must not be flattered and tie them to us. Instead of encouraging their dependence, we keep free of this attachment and thus keep them free. Even if this means that they then fall into error by childishly attaching themselves to someone even if this means they then fall into error by childishly attaching themselves to someone else, we pave the way for their eventual liberation from hesitation and fear to follow the good within themselves. This is the sort of following meant when the Ching counsels us to rescue others. This hexagram makes it clear that before we may engage others in following us, we must understand the principles of following. Leading and following are inseparably related. People may follow us without coming to harm only if we are directed towards what is good and correct. Our devotion in finding the correct way for ourselves creates the inner independence needed to command from others their respect and loyalty. No law or legal obligation can enforce another's loyalty. Fear to do wrong either creates only a begrudging compliance or a stubborn resistance. What we seek is a secure, willing, and heartfelt compliance with the good and the true. Following the truth means that we go with our inner sense of truth, the way an equestrian throws his heart across the fence before jumping. By clinging to truth, we allow it to lead us to the correct solutions to our problems. We cling to inner truth as if it were the North Star laying out a path across the ocean, guiding us toward that which we cannot see. In following what is high and good within ourselves, we, in partnership with the sage who knows how and when to make the possible succeed, the greatness of truth enables us to follow with joy. Often we do not follow our sense of truth. We fear that others will not understand us and that we will become isolated, or that we will lose our chance to influence a situation for the better. We are also taught by our Western culture that to achieve our goals, we must contrive or force them to happen. This hexagram counsels that all good in achieved, I'll repeat that. This hexagram counsels that all good is achieved simply by following the good within. There's no need to contrive, interfere, or force ourselves on others. When we do that, we follow the inner child who whines and wants only luxury. We often receive this hexagram because we become resistant in attitude, angry that the situation has not yet been resolved. We may have so far as to think of rejecting our fate to rescue the others and abandon serving the high and the good. We must not give up. Even though we have momentarily lost our inner independence, we need to disengage from our emotions and renew our determination to follow the good, even though it seems that we have waited beyond a reasonable time for improvement. To remain engaged is to remain under the control of our ego. We need to remember that we become impatient because of reverses. The reverses, we must realize, are due to some sort of personal indulgence. Basking in the comfort of progress we have gained, we sometimes grow egotistically expansive. This in turn opens the door to the re-emergence of egotism and transgressions by others, which in our self-indulgent mood we overlook. By overlooking their errors, we give them inches and they take miles. We cannot afford in the slightest degree to relax into self-indulgence or to appease bad habits in others. Changing line number 1. To go out of the door in company means to remain open and accessible to people. The I Ching notes that we can only lead others if we The I Ching notes that we can only lead others if we ourselves follow the good. We achieve nothing if we shut ourselves off because they do not follow the path. Remaining open and accessible to all sorts of people, friends or foes, is the only way to accomplish anything. Openness, however, does not mean that we abandon our principles. We cling to these principles, aware that events will somehow provide the means by which truth becomes self-evident. Thus, we do not throw ourselves away in quarrels over questions of attitude. Forgive me, I must go back there. Thus, we do not throw ourselves away in quarrels over questions of current opinion, nor do we strive to explain the truth to a resistant attitude. We allow the opportunity for truth to emerge if the situation permits it. We may point to it, providing we have not abandoned reticence. As the second line of receptive Hexagram 2 puts it, there exists in every situation the means for its correction. We need only remain open for those means to show themselves. Most often, however, only our awareness is needed for his awareness. For this awareness communicates to others on an inner plane. I'll read that last couple sentences there again. We need only remain open for these means to show themselves. Most often, however, only our awareness is needed, for this awareness communicates to others on an inner plane. Changing line number 2. If one clings to the little boy represents the childish part of ourselves. When we listen to its wants, dissatisfactions, and impatience, we lose our strong, persevering self. The small boy can be a conveniently hostile view of a situation or compulsive energy that drives us to contending and contriving and to using leverage, because the small boy feels that force is necessary. The little boy acts when he ought not act, and in a cowardly manner holds back when the essence of the situation requires that he move forward. Our childish self seeks, as its right, to enjoy and protect the progress made. But the right must be sacrificed if one is to serve that which is higher. We must do what duty and fidelity to the truth command, even if doing so would seem to jeopardize all we have gained. In letting go of inferior means, we let go of small boy. We let go of the small boy in ourselves. The path of the beautiful cannot be achieved by inferior means. Changing line number 3. If one clings to the strong man, one parts company with the inferior superficial, with the inferior and superficial. What is inferior and superficial is a comfortable relationship that suits our prejudices, or indulgent relationship in which we overlook what is incorrect, turning our backs on following and doing what truth requires. In the pursuit of comfort, people seek nourishment for their self-images at the expense of dignity and self-esteem. They give in order to get such relationships, in contrast to those based on respect, are superficial and they cannot last. The ego, once fed, expands its appetite. When we see this truth with clarity, we are able to relinquish the easy road of comfort. Although doing so may entail a sense of loss, the loss is more than compensated for by inner growth and self-esteem. Self-esteem is not something we can create by assuming ourselves to be okay, as in, I'm okay, you're okay. Self-esteem also results from having made hard choices to follow the good, whatever the risk and however alone and jeopardized that may make us feel at the time. Changing line number 4. Following creates success. Danger arises from the success we have in influencing others. It is ironic that as soon as we attain the influence with others through pursuing the solitary path of conscious innocence, reserve, and inner independence, we begin to consider ways to keep that influence. Thus, once more, we become dependent on the relationship. This line counsels that to go one's way with sincerity brings clarity. In not being turned aside by considerations and desires, we keep our ego under control. To go one's way with sincerity also means not to erect barriers to forgiveness, as when our inferiors flatter us by saying, those who have wronged us must meet with justice. We find that our ego goes along with us for a time, but then puts up its demands. To be sincere is to be completely free of ego demands, intent only on what is essential and correct. This line can also refer to others being insincere with us. Changing line number 5. Sincere in the good fortune. To follow our inner sense of truth wherever it takes us is to follow the good with sincerity and devotion. Such sincerity meets with the ascent of the cosmos. The person who is sincere in following the inner sense of truth constantly asks himself, what is essential and correct? In his heart, he humbly asks the sage to help him find the correct way. He keeps armed against evil by searching his mind for considerations, motives, and moods that would destroy a just and moderate view of things, or that would tempt him to break with what is essential in relating to others. Changing line number 6. He meets with firm allegiance and is still further bound. The sage, having previously retreated out of reach, returns to help the follower. The sincerity described in the 5th line meets with response. The sage helps the follower to find the correct way. The image of the correct thing to do and correct thing to say comes of itself at the moment we need it, because we keep attuned to what is essential and correct. During such times, we have the impression of being a conduit for something beyond ourselves, a sense of inner peace and comradeship accompanies this mysterious help. Just as the sage returns to help the follower, we return to being open-minded to those who seek our help. That ends Hexagram 17.